Well, hello and welcome back, my friend. Man, this week, this is going to be a fun one. So, just got done spending an amazing week with Jerry Dugan at Podcast Movement. So, let's see. This is August that we spent our time together. Oh my gosh, Jerry is a phenomenal guy, huge heart, and just is like encouraging, uplifting, and equipping. So, I'm super pumped for this conversation with Jerry. And selfishly, I get to hang out with him here with you. So I'm excited for that as well. Jerry is a podcast host. He's the host of Beyond the Rut. He's also helping companies like in their leadership, their management to up level their game to like make it a place that you and I would want to work. And I think that's the key thing, it's like how many jobs have we had where it's like, gosh, I can hardly wait to go home. Hey, it's Friday. Oh, it's Monday. Jerry is working to transform that kind of culture and make it a place where it's like a new family, right? A place where we can grow and are happy to work alongside of each other. So he is an amazing person. And if you're looking at it on YouTube, you'll see that Jerry's shirt says vision, and he has a large vision. So we're going to get into that one. Jerry, how are you doing today, my friend?
Oh man, Mike, I am doing great. So we're not going to be picking on John Shuckman on this one. This is serious.
No, we'll probably pick on John a little more outside of in other groups that we're in. So yes.
Sorry, I had to get a shout out to John. That was the best way I could do it.
Oh, dude, John was a great guest as well. I mean, it's one of those when you're with your friends, it's like there's a different conversation that's available. And John talked about his struggles at first when he was, starting out as a realtor and going like, oh my gosh, is this what I'm supposed to do? Like, and now he's crushing it. Oh my gosh. So it just continues to put out that ability that we are not stuck, like we're not in that rut that we are today. That's not where we have to be in 30, 60, 90 days or even a year out. So yeah, we can harass John. He's not here, awesome. But he deserves it. So how are you doing today, my friend? You doing great?
Oh man, I'm doing great. Before we hit record, I'd shared with you that now my wife gave me the okay for this probably 2 months ago, but I finally did it yesterday. I pulled the trigger on replacing my old laptop with a new MacBook Air. My son kind of helped me pick out because it was between that and the Pro. So really for the last 24 hours, I've been playing with a new toy that has just sped up all my processes, all my workflows, and I'm so excited just because of the new gadgets and hopefully Skynet, my old laptop, doesn't get mad. It should be fun. Who names their computer Skynet? I don't know. Me.
Well, wait. I'm like, no, we don't have to wonder you. So as AI isn't developing, if we end up with Skynet having a problem, we're going to come back to you, Jerry, and go, yes. This is ground zero. This is where the problem developed.
If it happens, I'll be impressed because that laptop needed to be replaced and it just didn't have the power to do what I needed to do anymore. So yeah, who would have thought? Terminator, the whole franchise is based off a podcaster's laptop that was just mad it got replaced. That would be a cool sequel. Anyway, okay, sorry, I'm back.
It could happen, man. You never know. Well, dude, let's jump into it. What does life look like for you on the professional side?
Oh, man. It's exciting because I'm in startup land right now. I've got a company I started called BTR Impact that originally, when I thought of this idea, it was the business arm of Beyond the Rut, the podcast that I've had for a little over 8 years now. But because I left my job in October of 2022, it quickly also became my leadership development business where I do keynote speaking and workshops around servant leadership using the tent framework that I've come up with over the past few months. So if leaders did these 4 things, they would create this environment that people would feel safe, they'd feel engaged and be less likely to leave their organizations, which will help the companies win. It'll help the individuals win. And the leaders caught in the middle, they'll stop pulling their hair out and they'll love what they're doing. They'll be able to go home, have peace of mind, all those things. And some people will ask, like, how does that tie into your podcast? Well, a lot of us tend to feel stuck in a rut because of what's going on at work. What we really want is more time at home with our families, with our spouse, with our children, more time to do our personal pursuits. Maybe there's a book we want to write or a sculpture we want to create, whatever it is. But we are so stressed out because of what's going on at work that we just don't have the mental or emotional or physical energy to do the things we really want to do that are important to us. So if I can help you on the professional side and just treat your team that 1 degree better than your competition, your people stay, they're more engaged, they're excited, they're growing with the skills that I teach in my workshops, then you're able to go home, not just on time, but sometimes even earlier, guilt-free, knowing that you've balanced things out at work. So that's what's going on professionally. It's been about 10 months in, and I'm starting to see the momentum pick up. So the paid speaking gigs are now showing up. So the first few months we just lived off of savings. But now it's like, hey, we got revenue coming in and we can bring this much off to offset what we're spending. And wow, that feels good. And then you and I, we met somebody more recently, Chris Williams from Group Coach Nation. And golly, I mean, an hour and a half to 2 hour conversation with that guy at Podcast Movement. And he's got that, they always say like the thing that separates water from boiling is like 1 degree. Like you get nothing, and then 1 degree higher, boom, boiling. And that's kind of what I felt like when I met Chris and had conversations with him. It's like he's got that 1 degree that's going to unlock everything else. And I'm excited. So business wise, I'm excited. Looks like I may not have to go back to corporate life after all. I wasn't ready to go back into the matrix. However, if I have to, I know I can. I just don't feel ready to go there yet.
Yeah. Well, the work that you're doing, I mean, it's one of those, I can't tell you how many times it's been, hey, so-and-so moved on. They took this knowledge with them. Mm-hmm. To be able to have a consistent group that wants to work together and to see the place elevated, dude, that I'm like, Jerry, where you been? Like, I needed you, like, working it in where I was before,
Yeah.
So,
and that's something like civilian businesses have to struggle with that the military often doesn't. The military is so steeped in its traditions, its policies, how it does what it does, that not saying that we're all replaceable, but I mean, in combat, you got to be replaceable. You got to make sure that as a leader, your team can pick up without you, and not just on the skill side and the mission side, but morale wise, that they can pick themselves back up with that resiliency and push forward. And when you get in the civilian side, you have somebody who's been there for 20 years and they decide to retire, or somebody decides to lay them off, or they do something that gets them fired. And all of a sudden you've lost all that institutional historical knowledge, and you essentially got to start all over again. And that just hurts. Or, your star player who's been there 8 years decides, hey, I'm going to go somewhere else where I can get a 50% raise on what I'm getting now and actually do just my job and not administrative work on top of that. Like I do less work, get paid more for it. I'm respected as a professional, and they'll go. If you don't treat them with those growth opportunities, make them feel cared for, they will go somewhere where they do get that. And it's just, it is how it is.
Yeah. It carries a weight of like discouragement. I mean, because the rest of the team is like, how are we going to measure up? How are we going to replace? And you and I both know that it's like when you bring in a replacement, it takes time to bring them up to speed.
Yeah.
Much less you're lucky if you ever get them to replace that person, because it's like, I've stepped into roles where it's like, I'm gifted in what I'm gifted in, but I'm not a clone of who I replaced or, anything like that. So it's super challenging. Well, let's transition onto the other side. Talk about, what does personal life look like for you?
Also good. My wife and I have been empty nesters now for almost 2 years. So I moved up to Dallas for a job. I was commuting back and forth between Corpus Christi and Dallas because we promised my daughter she can graduate from her high school. Well, she graduated. She went off to college, and Liv moved right up here. And I was worried like she wasn't going to adjust very well. But within a few weeks, she's like, "Kids, what kids?" No, no, she was not like that, guys. Kids, if you're listening, that's a joke. Ignore the fact we replaced you with 3 cats. Just, just move along, guys. Keep going. But anyway, why it's so good is that, my wife, not only are she and I close, she was really close to our kids, and it did kind of make her sad at times that when she wanted to hang out with our daughter or hang out with our son, she just couldn't jump in the car and go to them, or them jump in their car and come to us. Like they could, but it's like 6 hours instead of 10 to 15 minutes. So more recently, like about a year ago, our daughter moved up here. She was a half mile down the road, but now she made a best friend, and the two of them decided to get another apartment 6 miles down the road. We're like, oh, okay, now we got to deal with traffic. I don't know.
6 miles, 6 hours. It's all the same, right?
It's in Dallas traffic. Yeah, it can feel that way, but I mean, if you know the back roads, it's not that big of a deal. And our son moved up here just a couple of months ago, and so he's just a few buildings over from us in the same apartment complex. So for my wife and my son, they've kind of reestablished that tradition where Jacob would come over like every Monday and have lunch with her, and they would just shoot the breeze for a couple hours before he had to go off to work. And to see them have that back, it's like, that was part of their tradition, part of their routine. And, Jacob's doing his own thing. He's doing everything is on his own, but the two of them are so connected, and it's happy. I'm just happy to see that. And then our daughter is, spreading her wings. She's starting to fly, but she's not so far away that we can't, rush her and give her a hug and hang out with her and have a bunch of laughs. So that's going well. And then I've been working with a fitness coach for the past month and a half, almost 2 months. I've lost 10 pounds so far, and I'm eating healthier. I can go up 3 flights of stairs and not be winded. I just went rucking with a friend of mine this morning. We went 3 miles at a 17-minute mile pace, and I was still energetic for the rest of the day. I did take a nap at 2:00, but that's because it was nap time. It was siesta time. It's Labor Day when we're recording this. And anyway, so physically getting into shape, emotionally, we got the whole family, the whole gang's here in the same 6 mile radius. And it's just, life is good,
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. Having the kids nearby where you can still have that interaction, but yet they can also have their independence. Dude, that's amazing. I love it.
And, what I'm doing right now business-wise is in alignment with what I've always wanted to do with my life. So that's that other piece. It's like all coming together. So
there you go. You're taking that risk and investing in yourself, which is something that many of us don't see the value in. So I love watching and being able to cheer you on and say like, dude, you got it. This is crushing it. So, and I think that's what we also miss, is that relationship and that community, which, you and I have both been able to find as we've hit that point of being open to having dialogue and sharing and going, hey, this is what I need. And yes, I do value my dreams. Whereas before it may have been like, nah, I know like for myself and many other men, it's like, I just didn't see that it was feasible or that I was worthy of stepping into that, of having it. Like I would have looked at you, Jerry, and gone, yep, Jerry deserves it. He's going to get it. Cool. And would have looked at myself like, meh, you don't matter. This is what stacks up, according to your past kind of thing. So, yeah.
And it was like just looking at the clock thinking, man, I'm in my 40s now. Like I'm not getting younger. My parents who used to be in their 40s are now in their 60s and 70s. Actually, I think they're both I'll have to do the math on it. They might both be in their 70s now. Oh man. And so it's just like thinking about that and the cycle of life, the circle of life. And I had a guest on my show a few months back, Brian Crum, who is an administrator for a hospice. And one of the things he shared with me during that conversation was that, being at the bedside of people while they're in their final stages of life, one thing that he noticed was that people never really said, man, I really wish I worked one more weekend at the office, or I wish I got to inbox zero one more day. No, they'd rather have wished, they wish for things like, I wish my family was still here. I wish my grandkids were around me, or great grandkids, or just my own children. I wish I spent more time with my family. I wish I made the first marriage work. Whatever it is, like those are the regrets that he would hear at the bedside, and it would just break his heart. And it would even be things like, I wish I wrote that novel. I wish I wrote that song. I wish I wrote that screenplay. Who cares if it didn't make it? At least I would have known I gave it a shot. Those kinds of stories at the end of life. And it was kind of a wake up call to me. And, even though at work I had a trigger point that said, that's it, I'm done, I'm out of here. The storm was already brewing and forming ever since that conversation with Brian, because it was just sort of like, every week that went by, every month that went by, every project that got done to start a new project, I was like, how do I get my team to replace me? Like, I'm ready. How do I prepare my team to take my place? And I was working on that, and then somebody came along and ruined all of it. And I normally don't blame other people, but without dropping names or anything, but yeah, the person who was going to replace me left, and then the next person in line was like, I'm out too. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not sticking around to answer the awkward question of why is it that you got like 75 to 100% vacancy in your team in just 6 months. And and I knew it wasn't my fault. It wasn't anything I had. I talked with all my team. Like, I was doing check-in sessions with them, rounding. So I already knew what was going on. And then when it actually happened, the trigger event, I was also doing kind of exit interviews with them, like just to reassure them, like, I just need to know, what could I have done differently? They're like, oh no, 100%. It was never you. It was somebody else. And if that person was not around, none of us would have left. And I'm like, well, then I'm out too. I'm not sticking around. So all those things kind of came together, and then talking with, so my wife was in a Bible study last year. And when I left my job, she was, kind of not worried, but just sort of like, we're taking a big leap of faith. Like, we're coming out of not just my comfort zone. Like, we really came out of my wife's comfort zone. And she was the one that said, just quit your job. Now in her mind, I was going right into another job somewhere, and they were doing prayer requests in her Bible study group. And the leader asked Liv, how are things? And she said, my husband just quit his job because of this. He doesn't know quite where he's going next, but hopefully it's a short transition time. And so her leader put me in touch with her husband, who put me in touch with 3 other guys who are all HR leaders in the DFW area. And it was almost like one of those allegory books. Like, I'm wrestling in my soul, and 3 people just happen to come along, and I have 3 conversations, one with each person, that helps me move along just a bit more. And so where we thought these conversations were going to open up doors to companies that were hiring for what I do as a corporate leadership development person, what I got instead were 3 conversations that all independently led me to, you need to step out and pursue your dream. You're called to create. The first guy was like, read the book Called to Create. The second guy referenced the book. I'm like, did you guys all do this in a Bible study together? Like, oh no, I never met the other guy. I'm like, what? So they all independently came across the same book. They all independently told me the same thing when they heard my story. And all 3 of them, their connection to the original guy, Jim, what was his last name? I forget his last name, but his first name was Jim, was that he had helped each one of them figure out what they wanted to do in their lives, reimagine themselves, and get to the things they really wanted to do. And then this was them paying it forward, because he kind of mafia-like said, hey, talk to this guy, Jerry, and help him along the way I helped you along. And so I knew by the end of those 3 conversations, I had to jump out there, take a leap of faith, and start my own company, BTR Impact. And that was about as far as I knew. That was the plan. Like, jump out, start a company. What's it going to do? I don't know yet. I'm writing a book. How are we going to make money? Don't know that either. I got like a bunch of ideas. And so in this, my daughter, she comes over. She was a business student for a while. My wife, I thought it was an intervention, like you need to look for a job, not pursue business. It turns out they just wanted to help me hone in on the 40 or 50 ideas that they thought I was having in the moment. And like, what is the plan? And yeah, we sat down and I said, this is what's on my heart. I want to be a keynote speaker talking specifically about living your best life. Now, chances are companies aren't going to pay for that. So it's going to be really geared towards something that they're struggling with in their business. So that's how I landed to where I am now. So from there, keynote speaking to workshops, and they're like, so what else? And I'm like, and I got this coaching plan, like this group coaching plan, and I drew it out for them, but I kind of don't want to do that. And I put it away. And I mapped it all out, and I even mapped out like how far will our savings take us to give my wife peace of mind and share with her our plan. And here's the weird, funny thing was, I gave her like a 3-month, like I told her we could have one really good month and right back to work, like one, like spin it all, really good month, or just make Christmas really good and then back to work. Or we can stretch it out about 3 months and still live a bit lavishly. Or we could stretch it out to about 6 months, not a whole lot of cutbacks. Or, we can really stretch it out to a year. Like, we got stuff coming in, we got enough savings, and if we play our cards right, we could probably go a whole year. But we'd have to dip into some other reserves. And she's like, no, let's not do that. Let's go with the 6-month plan. So we were aiming for that, but oddly enough, it looks like we're on the 1-year plan after all. But it's like, I'm not even worried. It's like, wow, we were provided for this transition. And I shared earlier, things are starting to pick up steam, and like I could see the momentum happening. I could see the conversations happening. There's so much more clarity now than I had 10 months ago, and where I had something like 14 or 15 different directions. Like, my website used to have 15 different workshop offerings. Now there's only one. And I don't even have the coaching thing on there, but that whole group mastermind thing that Chris is working on, you and I, with for our various reasons, that mastermind group, I have drawn and redrawn on my whiteboard, on notes, OneNote, on notes on my Apple device, on paper. There's at least 3 or 4 journals that have that coaching plan on there. Everything from the funnel to the journey to how long it's going to last, what's it going to charge, and what's next after that. And I just draw it, redraw it. And every month I put it back. I'm like, I don't want to do that. And I put it away. And then I saw Chris do a webinar, and I was like, huh. And I pull that back. I don't even pull it out. I just redraw the whole thing again in detail. And then I see the guy 2 weeks later, and I'm like, hey, I remember you. And then he said, look, if it keeps coming back to you, you probably need to do this. Like, yeah, I know better too. I've experienced that a lot in my life. So yeah, we're going.
Well, I think that's the power of having a different perspective. Like you talked about Jim. Jim provided you other men who could give you insight into something that you didn't have. Chris is doing that same thing. He's able to come and speak a truth to you where, like, in our own lives, we can be confused, unsure, have that, 14, 15 plan idea like you were talking about. And it takes somebody else who has a different perspective to just come along and go, hey, those are all great, but why don't we focus here?
Yeah.
And their expertise, we want to make sure that they're like a Chris or a Jim, and somebody that's trustworthy, that's vetted, and not just be like, hey, I just met you on the street or in the airport. Like, what do you think of this? You want to make sure that it's somebody trustworthy that you're getting that guidance and that input from. But, you and I have both put ourselves in places where it's like, yes, you're trustworthy. I vetted you. Let me share my situation, and asking for that input. And for me, like, that's a game changer, because that wasn't something that I did before. It was like, that was a sign of weakness. And it's like, who the heck wants to be a weak or, a failure? It's like, nope. It just absolutely changes it. The thing that I want to bounce over to is, kind of going through, it's like, Jerry, this hasn't always been where, it's like, you've talked about having this community of men around you, right, that are investing in you and being open to their guidance, and having your family, that cohesion. You thought it was an intervention. It's not. They're coming alongside you to go, all right, what are we doing? That hasn't always been like what you've experienced. And oftentimes we'll look at somebody that it's like, oh yeah, Jerry sounds like he's crushing it. He's in a place I want. And we think you just came through it with a silver spoon, that it's always been this way. But you and I have talked about it, and it's like, I think you were 11 at the time when your parents got their divorce. Mm-hmm. Can we go back to that time and kind of like, what was going on? Where were you at? And kind of how you process through things?
Yeah. So my whole life up to the age of 11. The short version is my dad was in the military. He was in the Army, and he met my mom when he was stationed in Thailand during the Vietnam War. And so they met, they got married. A couple years later, they had me. A couple years after that, they had my brother. And we lived around the world. Like, we lived in Germany. We lived in Oklahoma, of all places, to Japan. And then a little tiny out in the middle of nowhere post called Hunter Liggett, Fort Hunter Liggett. If you've ever seen, what was it? The Clear and Present Danger was the movie with Harrison Ford. There's a scene where they're testing out the sniper to see if he's worthy of being a sniper. That's Fort Hunter Liggett. That's all you can see everywhere. Like, there's a trailer park, and then there's nothing. And so we're there. My dad gets orders to go to Germany. For some reason, the Army didn't put his family on those orders, so he had to go ahead. Then he had to get the orders amended and then come back and get us. Mm-hmm. And it turns out there was like a shortage for housing and all that. So in the 2 months that it took him to be able to get his orders amended, and not his fault. I mean, there's bureaucracy like crazy in the old Army and still in the new, I guess. So in that time, a helicopter pilot, another soldier who was stationed Fort Hunter Liggett for temporary duty on a training exercise, he had just seen the movie Top Gun, and he and his buddies decided, hey, we're going to be like Maverick and Goose, and we're going to have a bet here, like on the premises kind of thing. But it wasn't so much on the premises as it was, who is it in here that we can kind of break up? Like, who's that sucker we're going to go after? And they saw my mom, who was tending bar in the officers club, and they said her, and she's got a ring on her finger. And he's like, look. And so basically what they did was they all bet a paycheck. And this all came out later on, like as my dad was investigating it and trying to get answers and try to stop what was going on. We all learned a lot about the guy who was behind breaking up, my mom and dad. Because, even though he just got a slap on the hand, like, they knew, like, they're like, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's this guy. Oh man, there's things we wish we could do to him, but he's an officer and we're all enlisted guys, and that kind of thing. But anyway, yeah, they basically bet a paycheck. There was like 5 or 6 of them. And one guy went after her and started convincing her of all her insecurities. Like, hey, we should hang out sometime. Oh no, I'm married. Oh, well, yeah, that's okay though. We could be friends. And, well, no, my husband, he's working to get us over there. And he's like, well, your husband's probably doing the same thing I'm doing, because that's what we do. We're soldiers. And just like played off of her fears. So my mom, for many, many years, if not still to this day, believed that my dad truly was out there cheating on her. Therefore it was okay for her to cheat on him. And the reality was my dad was not cheating on her. And so yeah, my mom pulls us aside one day, my brother and I, my dad's still in Germany, and says, "Hey, you and your brother, you guys are going to go with your dad to Germany. I'm going to stay here and work on my education." And she still hadn't had like a GED. She had come over from Thailand, and so I'm like, my mom was strict. So for me, it was like freedom. Like, yes, bachelor pad. I don't get spanked every day for any dumb thing. My brother started crying though. So my brother was a little bit more aware at 9 years old than I was at 11. And my dad comes. He's on a mission to try to save his marriage. But at the same time, he has a short window to get back to Germany with us because of his orders. So we do eventually wind up in Germany, just the three of us, my brother, myself, my dad. Um, we got picked up by Sergeant First Class Moss, who was my dad's platoon sergeant. And then that night, or the next night anyway, we were in our apartment. We just got groceries. We're having our first dinner in our apartment. And while we're making sandwiches, I hear my brother scream, like, "Dad, stop." And I look up, my dad's holding a knife to his chest. And then it just hits me like, wow, my dad is not okay. And my brother or myself or both of us basically told him, "Hey, put the knife down." And he never put it down, but he let go of it enough that we were able to take it from him. And then he sobbed, he cried, he just said he had nothing to live for. And we said, "Hey, you got us." And so that seemed to calm him down for the night. And we immediately took every sharp object in the home, every knife, every fork, put it into a bucket. I don't know where my brother found the tape, but he taped the heck out of that bucket. Like, there was no getting in there unless you had a knife, but all the knives were in the bucket. And so, and then he took the bucket and he hid it somewhere in the building. Like, this was an apartment building that had a basement. He didn't put it in our storage unit. He found a place and he just hid this bucket of knives and forks. I remember the next day my dad asking, "Hey, where are all the knives and forks?" And we're like, "Oh, we got spoons. That's all we have, Dad. And if we're going to have anything sharp, we're going to have plastic. That's it. Only plastic knives, plastic forks." And so we ate off of plastic for a while. But that was really for the next 2 to 3 months was my dad attempting suicide. We're trying to go to school. I'm in 5th grade. My brother's in 3rd grade. We're trying to wrap up the school year. And at the same time, we're worried about, did Dad get to work? Is Dad going to make it home? Is Dad going to be like trying to overdose when we walk in the door? And so we found ourselves creating this plan of, in the morning, Dad, "Hey, before we go to school, we know it only takes you so many minutes to get to work, and we're going to call. And if you don't answer, we know that your boss is just one digit away. So we'll just call your boss and tell him what's going on." And, he tried to, threaten us back. Like, "If anything happens to me though, you wind up going to your mom." And, that's the whole reason why we're keeping this secret. And we're like, "Yeah, we know, but I mean, you're no good to us dead." And we don't want you dead. So we're helping you if you can help us. And so, yeah, he abided by that. He'd get to work, answer our call, he'd do his work, and we'd expect him to call before he came home. And we knew how much time it took for him to get home. And if we didn't get that call, we would call the equivalent of the emergency number for us over there. And for the most part, it seemed like we were going to make it. Like, okay, he gets the occasional bout of attempting suicide, but for the most part, we'll have like 4 or 5 days where he's not doing anything. But we're just always on watch. And one day, he did manage to get a rope around his neck and hang himself off a closet door. And I was the one who found him. Now, I was in 5th grade, barely 100 pounds. And this guy, 5'8", 5'9", weighed a lot more than that. I couldn't lift him. And I remember shouting out, "Please God, no." And the rope snaps. But I hear him grunt. I thought he died. I run outside to grab my brother. He's out playing. So we were taking turns who got to be a kid. And when my brother got in and saw my dad was breathing. And, again, sobbing, he said he regretted it. The moment he was hanging, he regretted it. And he's so grateful that he didn't die. And he's so sorry. He won't put us through that anymore. And, by then though, we were kind of like, we were grateful he was alive, but also mad. Like, "Hey, we trusted you and you knew all the rules, like no closed doors. You closed them anyway." So we were still upset about that. And, but I guess for our blessing, that rope left a mark on his neck that, because of Army uniform standards, he could not hide at all. So he had to go to work the next day with a red mark on his neck, and his boss saw it. Sergeant Moss he saw it and he was like, "Hey, Sergeant Dugan, what is that?" He goes, "Oh, I just, cut myself shaving." And he's like, "Sergeant Dugan."
That's indicative
older
of
than you.
a different kind of line, right?
Yeah, and he's like, "I'm older than you. I know that's not what cutting yourself shaving looks like." And then he asked him a series of questions. My dad, I guess, tried to dodge the questions, and then Sergeant Moss just picked up the phone and he called us. I guess deep down he knew we were at home, and I answered the phone. I don't know why. I think because I thought my dad would call. Like, no one else had ever called us during the summer. It had to be my dad. And so I pick up the phone. This is before caller ID, and it's Sergeant Moss. And I look at my brother like, "Oh shoot," because we were like I was old enough to stay home alone, but my brother was not old enough to stay with me. He had to be with an adult babysitter at that time, officially under Army regulations. So that was my oh poop moment, because I answer the phone and it's my dad's boss. He's a military policeman. Therefore, he's the law, and we're in trouble. I messed up. And he goes out and he asks right away, "Hey, is your dad trying to hurt himself?" And I say nothing. I'm like, I don't know if he's trying to hurt himself or not. He seems fine. So I'm still trying to keep the charade up, even though he point blank asked the very thing. Like, my dad went to work with a red mark on his neck. Like he knows, like he works with my dad. And the next thing he said was very pivotal. And he just said, "Hey, Jerry, we care about your dad very much here. And we know that you're worried about being separated from your dad, but I assure you, we want to help him. We want to make sure you stay with your dad. But for that to happen, we need to know from you, is he trying to hurt himself? Because if he is, I can get him the help. But that's up to you to say. I'm not going to pressure you. It's up to you." And he gave me the room to say it. And I broke down crying. I said, "Yes, he's been trying." He's like, "How long?" Since the day we got here in country. And that's as far as we know. I don't know if it's been going on before that. But I think he knew, because my dad did have antidepressants and so on before we got picked up by my dad. So that was it. Within 30 minutes, Sergeant Moss, an escort, and my dad were back at the apartment. We had 10 minutes to pack our stuff, just clothing in our bags. My dad also had only so many minutes to get his stuff. And all three of us, plus these two soldiers, took us to the nearest clinic. We got screened medically, and then that was it. My dad was then separated and sent off to get the care he needed right then and there. And then we met our foster parents, and that was scary because, I mean, up to this point, in the movies, in the books, your foster parents are always just crooks trying to game the system. And that's what we were expecting. We're like, "I thought you were caring for us." And Sergeant Moss is like, "Believe me, we know of this couple. We've sent plenty of kids, more than we needed to this couple. And you're in good hands. You'll reunite with your dad." And he's like, "Believe me." And I did. And the O'Neill family was like the greatest family dynamic we'd ever experienced. Like, this family prayed together for dinner. They ate all their meals they could. It was summertime. They ate all their meals together, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The siblings, when they had a disagreement, they talked things out. They were our age, and they would talk things out, whereas my brother and I would fight, like fists and nails and kicks and bites. And they would put us in something called timeout. And we're like, "What is this?" We would usually just get spanked and sent to our room to cry. Like, no, we're building our kids up to be respectful adults and contributors to society. And we want to do that. And if we do that for them, we also want to do that for you. But for that to work, you have to sit in timeout for 5 minutes. And your brother is going to be in timeout as well, but he's going to be in that room over there, so you two don't fight each other while you calm down. And then after that, we'll talk. And I was like, "This is so weird." But I was so grateful for it. Like, it was the first time that the answer wasn't just being spanked or, more anger or more pain. And that we lived with them for about a month and a half. And then we got reunited with my dad, escorted back to the States. My dad got further care there while my brother and I lived with an aunt and uncle. And then finally reunited with my dad, moved to California. And so that was a good 6-month window about. Started 6th grade in New Jersey, finished 6th grade in California at a different school. So sixth grade, probably my worst year as far as school goes. It was just, one nightmarish area to another, because it's middle school. It's like middle school by itself is hard, but middle school on top of all that was tougher.
And you and your brother had to grow up really quick in that kind of environment. I'm like, a 9 and 11-year-old shouldn't be watching us as parents in that kind of environment. I mean, that's something where it's like, yep, just put steroids on my childhood and I'm automatically an adult. I'm having to make adult decisions and hide sharp objects and protect my dad from himself. I mean, that's
read medical labels on pill bottles. It's like, hey, wait, this says 1 every 12 hours, Dad, not 5. Put 4 back in, please. Things like that. And like having to hold somebody accountable while he's trying to lie to you to get away with something. It was, I don't recommend it for kids. It's not the way to go.
Definitely not. Yeah.
And, statistically, most kids who go through something like that, they're broken. They take on drugs, alcohol, unhealthy sexual behaviors, and so on. And, I was the oddball to come out of that. Like I didn't come out undamaged. I'll tell you that, but, I didn't take on these negative coping behaviors. And I think that's where I feel like I was blessed. I think I carry a different kind of weight on my shoulders for some weird reason. And so we're back in California. My dad is with his family, his side of the family. So my grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and you would think, okay, we made it. Except I think there were 2 or 3 other uncles also going through a divorce, and it was just the perfect storm of how like hurt people. So you've got 3, I think it was 3, if I'm doing the math right, at least 3, maybe a 4th, where the uncles were they were all depressed all at the same time. Like it really wasn't a healthy environment for my dad looking back on it, because you got my grandpa who's like Mr. Tough as nails. You suck it up, you drive on. When I was your age, we didn't have any issues like this. Like he was not the most supportive guy when it came to mental health care. There was a big stigma for him. Hospitals were a stigma. To him, this was all my mom's fault. And every time he saw myself or my brother, he saw my mom. And so it wasn't exactly a welcoming experience for my brother and I, although, hey, Bruce, come on in. Good to see you again. My dad. So from 11 to 14, where my dad was getting his healing and getting his support, I'm getting bullied by my extended family. So I got like at least one cousin, his best buddy across the street, and one of the uncles calling me racial slurs like gook, half-breed, boat person, chink, nip. Those were the names I was getting from my extended family. And I thought, man, how do I fight back on this? Well, I mean, they're clearly idiots, so let me just correct them on their racial slurs. Since my mom's from Thailand, I just took it as an opportunity to educate them. Like, well, nip would be something you would call somebody from Japan. We're from way further south in Thailand, and I'm actually more west in a place you call Oklahoma, I think. So, not exactly a boat person how I arrived, but I mean, if that makes sense to you, then yeah, you show me the boat and I'll accept that. And they're like, oh, you're being Mr. Smarty Pants. And so a lot of fighting from 11 to 14 years old. I didn't win a whole lot of them, but, I did hear them say later on, like, you know what? He never won a fight, but man, it hurt to fight him afterwards. And so by 14 though, I got into a fight with the uncle, went into hiding in the garage, and that's when my dad finally saw what was going on, because he went on a trip to go get some stuff from my grandpa, comes back, hey, where's one of my sons? And they all try to make it sound like I was the bad guy in all this. Like, oh, he lost his mind. He kind of forgot where he was, forgot who he was. And my dad just asked my brother, hey, what happened? And my brother finally got back on his feet in a sense and said, this is what happened. And my uncle actually came out and told on himself in a way, because he thought what he did was good. And he came out and he just kind of bragged about it to my dad. And my dad looked at him and said, you need to walk out of here right now. If you said you attacked my son And he's been telling me, you guys have been picking on him for years, and I just never wanted to believe him because you're doing so many good things for me, but you need to walk out right now. And like, my dad's Mr. Nice Guy. I mean, he will turn the other cheek. But in that moment, like, there was I heard it because I'm just in the garage. I'm only like 10 feet away listening in. I'm like hiding underneath a pile of clothes or something. And just hearing that switch in his voice, like, oh, I've never heard this guy before. Oh, wow, there's a fire in this guy. That's my dad. That's my dad. Now I'm in hiding. I'm not just going to jump out like, hey, here I am. I'm like wishing there was popcorn in this garage. I should have brought some snacks. This is getting good. And now everybody scatters. It's like, find my son. I left him in your care when I went to go to the store for you. You need to find my son. And he used some language that, it was like foul language, but it was pretty harsh. It was pretty stern. And they all dispersed. My dad was still at the house. And he was just sort of like, man, what happened there? And he went into the garage and he cried. And then I just said, hey, Dad, I'm right here. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I've been here the whole time, but I wasn't going to tell those guys. And he's like, well, grab your things. We don't have to stay here. And now he was still obligated to come to my grandpa's house every weekend or every other weekend. But at that point, he was like, you're 14. You don't have to come up here anymore. You don't have to acknowledge them if you don't want to. And around that same time, Christmas was coming up. I had my first job ever. This is 8th grade. My first job ever. I was mowing a yard for this retiree. I still remember his name, JP Predmore. And I earned a whopping $20 a month. But one of these months, I took the $20, I went to the dollar store, and I bought as many Christmas cards as I could get. Because at this point, it wasn't enough that I didn't have to hang out there anymore. Like, it just dawned on me, like, I don't have to live in their misery. They're all miserable. They're all hurt. They want us all to be miserable together. And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, there's got to be more to life than this. Like, these guys are depressed. They're going through a lot of stuff. They don't know how to express it. I can't drown with them, and I'm not going to run away. I'm not going to kill myself. But I can look around and see my friends have a different life. They have a different vision for their lives. The O'Neill family was like a different, like, the more this went on with my family, the stronger the O'Neill family example stood out to me. And I thought, I want a family like that, where the husband and wife are on the same page for everything, not because the husband forces it, but because they mutually work together. Like, I was 11 and I observed that. I want to raise kids where, yeah, they might argue, they might bicker, but they will never attack each other physically. I want that kind of family. And I look at my friends, and they enjoy going on Christmas vacation with their family. They want to go on a trip with their family. They're looking forward to these kinds of things. They want to go see their grandparents. Me, I'm like, I'd rather not. and so I found myself wanting this other type of life. Not like I want their life, but I want whatever is better than where I am right now. And I remember writing on a vision, basically, like my vision for my life. But I didn't write it down in a journal. I didn't write it down on a poster or a card. Like, I wrote it down on Christmas cards, one for every person in my family I could think of, or at least one for every family within the Dugan family. And it said, essentially, I want to change the direction of the family name and the family tree. I wanted to put a joke in there. I wanted to actually branch, but I was like, it's too mean, too mean. It's like, half of them won't get it anyway. I was still kind of mad. Like, there was still a chip on my shoulder there. But I said, I wanted to change the direction of this family. I want to be able to walk in stores in our town and not be followed by security. I want us to be able to send our kids off to college with the confidence that they're going to do well, that they're going to live a better life than us. I want to be the first to go to and graduate from college. And I want you all to be able to be proud of the Dugan name in your own way. And I signed it and put those in envelopes, and I gave them out to everybody in the family, all handwritten. So it wasn't like we didn't have computers and printers. I guess we had them, but we didn't have them in our home. And so I had to handwrite all these, and I gave them out. I think up to 20 of them. And half the family loved it. They were like, "Oh man, way to go! Yes, do this. We're right behind you." And the other half was like, "Who do you think you are? You're better than us? Come on now." And I didn't care about that. It was just like, wow, like here I am showing hope. And I said nothing in the card to degrade anybody in the family. But like my grandfather, for one, and a few others were like, who's this guy? Like, why is he better than us? Why does he think he's better than us? He's not better than us. And, I could hear them grumbling about it because my grandparents had a small house. And it was like really the last time I went for a long time to my grandparents' house. And that was it. I just focused on me. Like, I want to go to college, so I got to focus on that. And I just like head down, made sure I got good grades. It's in high school. I got involved in football, really because I was a cute cheerleader and she seemed to like football players and I needed to be on the football team for her to notice. But it turns out you had to be like a starting quarterback. I was like third string offensive guard. So I made choices. That's all I can say.
Now, if I remember correctly, like with those Christmas cards you sent out, there was still somebody that, like, I don't remember exactly how recent it was, but they still had it like years later, right?
Yes. Yeah, just a few years ago, I was talking to my cousin Susie, and she was just talking. We were catching up because it had been a good decade and a half since we had talked to each other. And she had shared with me that she was always proud of me. So she was part of the family that was proud that I'd written this. And she had shared with me that she held onto the card because in her darkest days, she was able to look at that and say, I want that too. And she went for, she had it like, if you think I had it bad, I think she had it worse. And I won't get into her story because it's her story to tell. But she said that card inspired her to go back to school and become a certified nurse assistant. And for a good window, she had a 9-to-5 healthcare job and she was a bona fide adult with a career. And now she's moved on and she does like arts and she has a bunch of different other revenue streams for her that get her through. But it was that she said that card inspired her to go back to school and get there. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I just reached out to her recently to see if she still had the card. She goes, oh yeah, it's tucked away in a box. I'll see if I can find it. And so she knows she has it. It's just a matter of like, where did she put the box and how deeply buried is it in all her other things? So it might be a while before I get the card, or I didn't want the card. I just wanted a photo of it so I can see what I wrote exactly. But it blew my mind though. Like I remember when I wrote that, my hope was people would hold on to it and do something with their own lives with it while I was doing something with my own life. And to hear it from her firsthand, I didn't prompt her. I'd forgotten about the card until she brought it up. I was like, that's right. I did write that thing out and I got it out there. And so that it just, it gets me choked up in a way when I think about that and, just how, again, I'd moved forward and forgotten about it, but it did do something for somebody.
Yeah. I think it's amazing the way it's like a vision and a desire that you had when we share it can encourage and impact others around us when we may just be like, nobody's going to care, but we don't know who is and isn't going to care until we actually share it. And I think that your story and the fact that she still had it or has it is proof of that. Now, you and I have talked about other stuff and I want to make sure we get a chance to share it. Would you be open to joining me a second time, Jerry? To kind of share some of the other stuff we talked about.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We just got started, guys.
No, dude. I mean, it's one of those of you've gone through a lot where, we step into those situations. We're forced to grow up, to leave our childhood sooner than, would be normal. But it's like how it impacts us can be different between you and I and, whomever. And the fact of you realizing I want something else. like, this place is not where I want to go. This isn't where I want to continue. I mean, that's especially at that age, being a teenager and going, yep, this is not the road. Thank you. I'll take the detour. I think that's so crucial, and it doesn't have to just be in your teens. It can be at any age that we notice those opportunities and those desires to make a switch. So it's like just you taking that initiative and the action behind it, I think speaks volumes. And I hope that, others follow in that same suit, regardless of where they're at. Before we end here today, I do want to ask, hey, how can men reach out and get in touch with you outside of the podcast?
Yeah. If you're interested in listening to the podcast itself, beyondtherut.com. There I've got blog posts, podcast episodes, a bunch of other resources, like a goal setting tool. But if you just want to reach out directly and say, I heard you on Mike Forrester's show, info@beyondtherut.com. And just be patient, because apparently I subscribe to a lot of newsletters and I have to unsubscribe, but I feel bad about doing it. So I got to get through all those to get to your email.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Jerry, for coming and sharing both your journey and the insights. I really appreciate it, brother.
My pleasure, man. I look forward to doing this again for part 2.
Yes.